current union, and most of them are fine, and some of them are fantastically wealthy. And despite this, the No campaign was really saying you'll not be allowed to use the pound. You can't use the pound until about a week ago when you had the final debate on independence, where Alistair Darling stood up in the middle of the debate, said, of course Scotland can use the pound, which completely undermined the No campaign's entire argument. At the same time, Alistair Darling was undermining the Better campaign by pointing out that he and Better Together have been lying to the Scottish people about the pound. Unison, the largest public service union in Scotland, revealed that Alistair Darling and many of his friends in the Labour Party were heavily invested in companies profiting from and driving the privatization of the National Health Service. This is something he was even accused of during the national television debate, when an elderly woman implored people not to believe a word that comes out of Alistair Darling's mouth. Now, he and other people called the Unison report lies, but the facts do speak for themselves. They are true. Alistair Darling and others are invested in privatization of the NHS. And then Better Together, and this is where we get to the women, released an ad so terrible that even the Italian press has been lambasting it for sexism. And remember, in Italy, it's acceptable for a prosecutor to call a female defendant a she-devil on the stand. When these are the people calling you sexist, you have made a mistake. The ad consisted of a woman sitting in her kitchen drinking tea and announcing that because she didn't have the time to think or do any research, she was going to go vote no and go wash some dishes. That's not hyperbole. I'm not exaggerating. I'm not exaggerating. That's the ad. I'm going to vote no, and now it's time for me to go wash dishes. This has been thoroughly mocked on Twitter by a number of women who are just random Scottish mothers. And they've posted responses on Twitter and YouTube. The meme called Patronizing Better Together Lady has sparked a viral marketing campaign from the Yes Scotland camp. So that's sort of how the No campaign has sort of collapsed over the past week. And again, the polling now puts the Independence campaign within 6 points of victory.
Wow.
You guys still there?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I know that was a storm of information. So the response to this, and this is one of the things that's kind of disgusting. The response to this from the No campaign is once again focused on ruthless negativity. They haven't learned anything from the past few months of campaigning, where they've seen their leads slowly worked away by negativity, and they're going negative again. A Labour Party MP who was campaigning in Scotland was egged in Kirkcaldy, Fife, over the weekend. And since then, the Better Together campaign has been screaming about organised intimidation because of one egging incident. Now, I was able to get a hold of a stack of news reports last night involving incidents of violence from the No campaign. Jim Sillars, a former Labour Party member and a member of the SNP who was campaigning for independence, was egged. He was also threatened with notes that said he needed to watch his back and that people were glad that his wife was dead. An 80-year-old man in Glasgow who was campaigning for independence was pushed by a young woman, fell and broke his arm. A woman who was said by activists to be pregnant was kicked in the stomach over the weekend by a man from the Britannica Party in Glasgow. Now, the Britannica Party is a group campaigning for the No campaign that is associated with the neo-Nazi British National Party. Alex Salmond, the Prime Minister, has received death threats, and in one case, a No supporter drove erratically and aggressively towards his car, tailgating him, speeding up, slowing down, getting in front of him. And if you'd done that to a governor of a U.S. state, the police would probably have shot you. But instead, this guy has had his picture in the Scottish Sun under the headline, Better Tailgating.
I got a question from the chat room.
Go ahead.
This is from Ricky. Says, if Scotland votes for independence, will they still be a member of the Commonwealth?
Yes. Their intention is to stay a member of the Commonwealth and to stay very, very good friends with Britain. The idea of creating the border is to just make exports that are now de facto de jure. They want to have a great relationship with Britain and with the rest of the Commonwealth. That's the stated intention of the SNP right now. Now, the thing I'll point out about all these incidents of violence we've just discussed is the Yes campaign, despite all these incidents of violence coming from the No campaign, have not claimed that there's an organized campaign of intimidation from the No camp. because these are isolated incidents spread over 5 million people over the course of a few months. And no one who's seriously involved in the campaign really thinks that these specific incidents of violence are part of a larger intimidation campaign from either side. But that won't stop the British press from printing articles about fears from the No camp of mass carnage, which are completely baseless and don't reflect who the Scottish people are, whether they support yes or no. So that's the situation right now. The No campaign is talking about their fears of violence and complaining about organized violence that doesn't exist. And the British press have been largely running with that. I've seen a couple of news reports calling independent campaigners thugs and referring to the fears of the No campaign and announcing that the police are about to meet with Alistair Darling.
Now, former PM Gordon Brown and Cameron have seemed to have joined forces to push back against Scottish independence. I guess that makes strange bedfellows. It
really does. And it's not just the Tories and Lib Dems that are part of the No campaign, just like it's not just the SNP and the Greens that are part of Yes. You have the Radical Independence campaign, you have other folks. And one of the things about strange bedfellows is the radical right in Scotland, which is a very small group of very angry people, are essentially supporters of the No campaign. The Orange Order, which is part of all the marching stuff in Ireland and which does marches in Glasgow, they're part of the No campaign and are announcing that they intend to hold a march to save the Union and stuff like that. There's actually an incident in an Orange March or what's called an Orange Walk in Scotland, where a 12-year-old girl was hit in the face with a broken glass bottle recently. And there are pictures of her all over Twitter, blood pouring down her face, being led away. That's the kind of thing that has been happening amongst the No camp, and yet it's the Yes camp that's being accused of being violent because of one incident with one egg. Oh, and by the way, about that egg, the Yes campaign on Twitter has found images of the guy and been tweeting them at the police to try to get the guy who egged their opponent caught. So,
well, that's the way it should be done. I mean, yeah. you got to self-police in these situations.
Yeah, and there's been a good deal of that from the Yes campaign. I can tell you. Okay. It's just it's fantastic to me. Not fantastic. It's astounding to me that the British press is running with these reports of violence from the Yes campaign when there have been a great deal more incidents of violence from people associated with the No campaign. Even though folks in the No campaign want nothing to do with the Yahoos and the Britannica Party, or most of them want nothing to do with the Orange Order. It's in fact the Better Together campaign has publicly distanced themselves from the Orange Order and asked them not to go on the march that they're going on. Wow. And so it's very interesting that, and one of the things I think we need to take away as Americans from this is looking at the movement politics surrounding this, finding ways to work as the left with people that we don't get along with can lead to big successes, not just in electoral politics, but there's been a sea change among the Scottish people. Once this kind of thinking, the idea, the desire for self-determination, once this gets activated, it doesn't go away. And one of the things that a lot of people who are British commoners are worried about is even in the case of a no vote, there are going to be people who are going to continue to want independence in greater numbers than they did before this current referendum. In the same way as the 1979 devolution referendum failed, there was another referendum on devolution that set up the Scottish Parliament in 1997. If this fails, and there's every chance that it will succeed, there's a great likelihood that the independence movement will just continue to grow after the vote. I mean, that's one of the things that it's going to be very difficult for the British state to deal with, is that this way of thinking, the new desire on the part of the Scottish people for self-determination is not going to go away if they lose.
Business Insider 3 days ago talked about signatories from big business that are advocating Scottish independence, and Business Insider says that's a big boost.
Yeah.
For the independence movement.
You know, the independence movement goes across every single social, economic, and cultural barrier. There's a big group called Asian Scots for Independence, where folks some of them who grew up in India and Pakistan, a lot of whom were born in Scotland, are supporting Scottish independence. There's a situation where Alistair...
You there?
You lost him? You lost him?
Yeah, it seems we lost him.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, we did. I'll see if I can get it back.
Yeah. I mean, I see his. I think his audio just dropped. But yeah, we're listening to Will McLeod. He seems to have dropped off briefly here, and he's speaking about Scottish independence. And let's see if we can get him back on the horn here for the last couple of minutes that we have. And we certainly do appreciate him giving us the information that we need. This is a quite stunning result, and a result that hasn't quite come to fruition yet, but it's looking like Scottish independence might be on the horizon. So,
Yep. Never would have guessed it, but yeah, it's but how's it possible? He may be on another line or something. I'm not really sure on that. We'll just have to connect here later. But okay, see if we can get it that way. Maybe
Hello?
Might have got lucky. Yeah, you're back. You're live.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm back. What I was saying, I don't know how much you heard of what I just said, but one of the biggest parts of the Scottish independence referendum has been over the war in Iraq, essentially saying if we vote yes, we'll never have to be part of that kind of illegal war ever again. And so one of the things that we as Americans are going to have to talk about is the fact that the Bush administration's policies of military adventurism in the Middle East will have played a significant role in the breakup of one of our closest allies. We're going to have a conversation about the fact that the Bush administration bears some responsibility for creating the political situation in which folks who've been part of the independence campaign can have a conversation. That is the fault of radical conservatism, both in the United Kingdom with Thatcherism and in the United States with Reagan and with the Bush administration.
Yeah, I was reading that a lot of Scottish intellectuals, business leaders and such said that they're run by a Tory government they didn't vote for.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And the thing about the Scottish independence campaign is it cuts right across all economic and social and cultural lines. There are people from every single culture in Scotland who support the independence campaign, every single economic class, and that's one of the amazing things about essentially the movement politics that we've seen on the part of these various groups, from the radical independence campaign to the SNP, to the Green Yes vote, to every single group that's campaigning for independence. They say we all agree that we want this to happen, and so we're going to put all of our other disagreements aside and try to achieve it. Imagine if we did that in the United States with money in politics to try to eliminate the system of legal corruption that we have in this country.
That would be something. Well, thank you, Will. We're out of time now, so we'll catch you next week. And thank you so much for filling us in on these important world events. You're listening to the After Show, or have been listening to the After Show with Wink and Justice and our World Affairs and Government correspondent, Will McLeod. Tune in tomorrow during this time for Kicking Ass with Tom, otherwise known as Fripp. Not that Fripp, the other one.
Right.
And we'll be back here on Wednesday. I'm still waiting for a confirmation for our guest on Wednesday. I won't divulge who I want to have, but when I find out, I'll let you know and put it up on Twitter and elsewhere. And